we approach Halloween, it is that time of the year for us to have stupid conversations about what sort of costumes you can and cannot wear. Now, I am not of the opinion that every costume is appropriate, because that would be foolish. But I'm also not of the opinion that just because one person is offended by a costume unreasonably, that means that the costume is inherently bad, or terrible, or racist, or any of that stuff. Particularly when you're talking about children's costumes. I do think that there's a difference in kind between children's costumes and adults' costumes. So very often you'll see adults who should know better dressing as things in order to mock the culture that they're wearing something of. So, for example, if my little daughter were to dress as Princess Tiana from a Disney movie, she wouldn't put on blackface, presumably, but if she were to dress as Princess Tiana from Princess and the Frog, then nobody would be offended by that because she's a little girl. If my wife were to do the same thing, people might have some more questions. There is a difference between children's costumes and adult costumes, and I think that that's worth noting. By the way, I do think that the whole notion of adults dressing up for Halloween, I'm not the biggest fan unless you have a child. Just a general rule. Like, I have a kid, so both of us dress up in costumes for Purim, for example, and on Purim everybody dresses up. I'm not sure that adults dressing up for Halloween and like making a huge deal out of it, unless it's like a cutesy thing, is really a thing. Because it turns out that most people are just looking to get drunk and participate in various activities of which I would not approve, and so you get like slutty nurse costumes and such. Not my favorite thing. In any case, the left has decided that it must set some standards, however, and the standards for white people is you cannot dress up as anything but yourself or an inanimate object that is culturally sterile. Basically, it has no cultural sort of weight. You can dress up as like a Rubik's Cube. Like, that would be a good thing. Or a spoon. Like, a spoon would be good, right? You can dress up as a letter of the alphabet. But you can't dress up as anything else, because if you do, you're likely to offend someone. So if you're a white person particularly, you have to be very, very careful about these standards. And now the left is extending these standards down to children. So there's an amazing piece in Cosmopolitan magazine that was going around yesterday that I have to go through, because it does reveal, a culture that is determined to be oversensitive about things that don't matter is going to be a culture that tears itself apart. And this is a perfect example of that. We should all be sensitive to the cultural concerns of others. I think that's appropriate. I mean, I really do, actually. But I also think that if you are looking to be offended, then you're going to find something to be offended about. The latest iteration is Cosmo has put out a piece by the Red Book editors that says that you should not allow your child, your daughter, to dress as Moana for Halloween. Moana is, of course, the Polynesian princess from the self-titled movie, Moana. And because she's Polynesian, they're not saying that if you have a white kid, then your kid should not be allowed to dress up as Moana. And the article is just a masterpiece of stupidity. So I really want to go through it, because I think it speaks to where we are in the culture. And you want to know how you got Trump? This is how you got Trump. The feeling that everyone is oversensitive about stupid crap is how you got Trump. And then Trump says stuff that people should be sensitive about, and then they're not sensitive about it, and so things get worse. In any case, here are the Red Book editors from Cosmo. What I tweeted was, I'll take advice on how to dress my child for Halloween when Cosmo stops telling me to abort my child or raise them gender neutral. In any case, the piece starts like this. It's mid-October, which means Halloween is just 2 weeks away, which means it's way past time to decide on a Halloween costume for your kid. First of all, that in itself is stereotypical. How could you decide for your child? How patriarchal are you? Chances are you have a child that is enamored with all things Disney and wants to be all of the princesses. All of them, especially Moana. The New York Post recently highlighted an article on raceconscious.org, which seems like a terrible way to spend your day, reading raceconscious.org, about how that's probably not a good choice if your kid is white, and revealed that moms are freaking out over the culturally appropriative costume. As I've said before, cultural appropriation is idiotic. It's one thing for you to take something that has deep spiritual meaning and then mock it. It is another thing for you to say, you know what's great? Italian food. You know what's awesome? Chinese food. You know what's pretty cool? Hoop earrings. Like, really, if you're getting oversensitive about this stuff, folks, you really need a life. And it says, needless to say, the Post coverage has only amplified the debate around what does or doesn't constitute cultural appropriation. Last year, Disney came under fire for its Maui costume, which depicted the demigod's painted brown skin. I looked this up. Apparently, Disney released a costume from one of the characters in the film, who's played by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and the costume involved having brown skin, I guess. And this was a big controversy, and so they had to pull the costume. And basically, I'm looking it up right now. The reason people were angry is because the costume itself was a brown skin bodysuit adorned with Polynesian tattoos and a faux leaf skirt, and 2 sets of wigs with thick dark hair to top off the Maui and Moana look. And this is just terrible because, for some reason that I don't understand, because Maui is a Polynesian in the movie. So that's kind of weird. Like, they weren't saying that you should paint your face black. They were saying this is what Maui looks like. We all have eyes. People are different colors. In any case, I don't think that it was, just the worst thing that ever was. In any case, the company ultimately pulled the costume in response to the uproar, saying the team behind Moana has taken great care to respect the cultures of the Pacific Islands that inspired the film, and we regret that the Maui costume has offended some. The Maui question may have been settled, but this year there are plenty of tweets out there asking the internet and Lin-Manuel Miranda if it's okay to dress up as Moana for Halloween. First of all, I think we have to ask a question. Why should Lin-Manuel Miranda be able to write the music for a movie about Polynesians? Why not a Polynesian person writing Polynesian music for a movie about Polynesians? Lin-Manuel Miranda's in Polynesia, as far as I'm aware. In any case, the original article, written by Sashi Ferris, discusses how her white daughter was torn between dressing as Elsa from Frozen or the titular character from Moana. Ferris expresses concern that while an Elsa costume might reinforce notions of white privilege, dressing up as Moana is essentially cultural appropriation, the act of reducing someone's culture to stereotypes and thereby belittling it. Though Ferris puzzles over how one might wear a Moana costume respectfully, she ultimately decides it just isn't a good idea. So, let's get this straight. The left is saying your daughter can't dress up as a Polynesian girl that she admires because that's bad. Because something. We can't have heroes who are cross-cultural. We just can't do it. Jews have to dress up like Jews. White folks who are not Jewish or Italian or German have to dress up like those people. Basically, dress up as yourself is the Halloween advice from the left this year for white people. I do love the idea that she can't dress up as Elsa because that would be ethnocentric. But she should dress up. She also can't dress up as Moana because that would be cultural appropriation. I'm a little dizzy at this point. It says, at this point, you might be saying something like, but I just dressed up as Jasmine as a child and I'm not a racist, or it's just a Halloween costume, please chill the F out. Right, I'm saying both of those things, but I didn't dress up as Jasmine. But one of the best things about time is that it moves forward. You should too. This is Cosmo. You can and should strive to be better than you were 10, 20, or 30 years ago. Well, how about more intelligent? Because it sounds like you just want us to be dumber than we were 10 years ago. If you missed the mark when you were younger, maybe think about using this Halloween as an opportunity to teach your kids about the importance of cultural sensitivity. If your child's dream costume feels questionable, don't just throw up your hands and hand over your credit card. You're the parent here, and the onus of what your child wears falls on you. If your kid wears a racist costume, you're kind of wearing it too. I just want to note here a little bit of an incongruity. Okay, I love that sentence. You're the parent here. Right? If your child's dream costume feels questionable, don't throw up your hands and hand over your credit card. You're the parent here. Unless your child is a boy who declares that he's a girl, in which case you're not the parent here, shut the F up and hand him over to a pediatrician for hormone blockers. Then you're not the parent. So if your kid decides that your kid is a member of the opposite sex, then you're not the parent anymore. But if your kid wants to dress up like Moana, well, damn it, step in! Don't you understand the kind of damage you're doing to the country? Okay, but it gets even better. Recognize this. Moana is a really special character to young girls of Polynesian descent who have never seen a Disney princess who looks like them. Just like how Tiana from The Princess and the Frog likely resonated with young black women who had waited decades to see themselves represented. Okay, so? White girls have plenty of princesses to choose from. There's Belle, Ariel, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty. You get the idea. Well, I guess that only mermaids can dress up as Ariel. And as far as these other characters, none of them are Jewish, so what does my daughter do? I just don't know. Is it white cultural appropriation for her to dress up as Cinderella? She's really big into Cinderella. If your Caucasian son or daughter doesn't get to be exactly what they wanted for Halloween, encourage them to take a step back and realize that they're awash in privileges that the real Moanas and Tianas of the world will likely never see, because the world is full of racist a-holes. I'm going to go with, if you are so race conscious that you think that you can't admire someone of a different color or ethnicity, you may be one of the racist a-holes. You might want to take a look in the mirror. But here's the best part of the article. Basically, the article says you can't dress your daughter as Moana because Trump. Really, I'm not making this up. That's how you got Trump times when they're becoming ever more empowered. Thing. Really, that's what the article says. I'm not making this up. It's important to align with and stand up for people of color and minorities, and a key part of that is showing respect for their cultures. To pretend to be a racial, ethnic, or religious minority when you're not makes light of their history and reinforces a deeply problematic power dynamic wherein white people use, then discard, pieces of culture they've subjugated for centuries just because they can. And they say that your kids can still sing Moana songs. I don't know why. But you're not allowed to allow your kid to actually dress up as Moana. And then Fijian Emmeline Madigie suggests using your kid's desire to be Moana or Maui as an opportunity to teach them about actual Polynesian culture. That's fine, but why can't they dress up as those people? Okay, well, as I've said before, every year when I was growing up, when I was a child, I dressed up as John Adams. John Adams, not a Jew. right? John Adams, a Christian founding father. I used to get in that costume every year because I was a huge John Adams fan because I grew up on the movie 1776. Was that culturally appropriating John Adams? Was that making light? The whole point of your kid wearing a costume is that your kid is saying the costume is cool. It's that simple. End of story. But this is how you get Trump, really. It's the oversensitivity and the deliberate oversensitivity and the attempts to paint everyone who is not willing to fall for this microaggressions culture as racist that is the serious problem, and it's why people are rejecting this nonsense wholesale.